Before returning to the power tower, Sainayers reminded us that we needed to restock on healing potions, necessitating a visit to the local alchemist. Entering the small construction, the shop appeared cluttered with all manner of containers, made mostly of glass and each containing some strange powder or liquid. A young dwarven woman stood as we entered the building, a little surprised to encounter some potential customers. "Are you in need of a potion or two? I don't have any water if that's what you're looking for, but I do have a variety of magical potions if you're interested." Nodding affirmatively, I purchased several potions of healing for each member of the party. The transaction commenced and the dwarf here politely thanked me for our business. "You look familiar," Ariana then commented, observing the alchemist carefully. "Where have we seen you before?" The dwarf stared blankly ahead, not sure of what to say. "Oh, Prince Hebrami, who we met in a holding pit about a 2-week trek east from here," the young elf then remembered, reminding the rest of the party as well. "Are you two related at all?" "You know Hebrami?" The woman responded, rather shocked. "He's my vagrant brother. If you found him in some holding pit, that does not surprise me at all. He told us he's the grandson of Lord Hefralin, which would make you a princess." Kartha both asked and suggested, surprising the alchemist. "Lord Hefralin? Me, a princess? Wrong on all accounts, I am afraid." The dwarf breathed a deep sigh, then took a step forward and softened her voice, almost too embarrassed to continue. "Hebrami has always been a thief and a lowlife, I am sad to say. We aren't related to Lord Hefralin in any way. If that's what he told you, it was all a big, fat lie. So the promise that this Hefralin would pay us for your brother's release, also a lie?" Eswin confirmed, angry but not surprised. The dwarf nodded affirmatively, realizing that we had been duped. "Yes, unfortunately, the whole story seemed quite believable and reasonable. Hebrami lied to all of us and took tremendous advantage of our generosity. Hopefully we will meet him again someday so we can even the score." Noticing the jeweler nearby and wanting to sell some of the gems we recovered from the death crypt of Khaldun, we decided to stop in. The shop seemed to contain just about every type of stone, crystal, and rock imaginable, so it seemed we had come to the right place. I carefully laid several jewels on the counter and was quickly paid in platinum pieces for each, the transaction commencing in silence, as the jeweler was apparently in no mood to speak to us directly. "Pardon me, tall ones," a meek voice came from behind, surprising us. Turning around, we found an older female dwarf standing there in the corner near the door, her clothes just as old and her skin rather blemished. Worse, it was clear that she was blind, and I assumed she had come to ask for a few coppers. Before I could even react, however, the jeweler here ordered the woman out of his shop, even throwing a few worthless stones at her to hasten her retreat. The reaction by the jeweler quite unreasonable, I demanded that the jeweler stop his assault, scolding him in the process. I then turned to the older dwarf and ensured that she was okay. The blind dwarf nodded that she was unharmed, then held out an old, cracked cup, an apparent receptacle for a tiny donation. "Please, tall ones. Just a single gold piece, that's all I ask." Sympathetic, I dropped a gold piece into her cup. The woman grinned as she heard my donation strike the bottom of her cup, the blind dwarf quite acute at hearing. "I can hear everything," the dwarf continued, her words surprising. "The stone beneath us, it cries out, wounded, changed, afraid." While I wasn't expecting such strange words, she was a dwarf, and she was blind, so, perhaps, she knew what she was talking about. Ariana asked her to continue. "You are here to restore the Tears of Blue, are you not? Something has happened, below the city, something consisting of incredible power." The blind woman then stopped. I sensed there was more she was willing to tell, but she seemed to want something more from me, something that everyone within the city desperately needed right now. Handing her one of our last water skins, the dwarf took a swig and then continued her cryptic message. "Down below, where the water once flowed, the rock itself now moves with a mind of its own. Put the rock back to sleep, blow the horn and undo what's been done to make our glorious dwarf weep again." Pressing for more information, the dwarf simply smiled, her strange message over. Several of my party members looked to one another in confusion. Did the woman provide a helpful clue, or was it all just mindless babble? While I couldn't be certain, I sensed that the blind dwarf likely knew what she was talking about, and that the solution to the problems here in blue likely lay underground. My party unsure of how to respond, the blind dwarf simply nodded and took her leave, easily finding the door and departing in silence. "Good riddance." The rude jeweler called out, happy to see the old woman depart. And with that, the odd encounter was over. The local scribe, where magical scrolls are purchased and sold, happened to be nearby, and Redfern talked us into stopping to see what might be available. Entering the smaller construction, reams of paper lay stacked everywhere, while a dwarven cleric awaited our presence, ready to sell us whatever magical scrolls we might require. Both St. Aers and Redfern had a few first-level magical scrolls we had found along the way that we didn't need, so we sold those, and the scribe thanked us for our business. You must be the adventuring party recently arrived, the cleric continued, eyeing us with both surprise and honor. Traveling across the Cyan Desert to help this city when most are fleeing is a brave and noble thing to do. Why was it so important that you help us? All of us looked at one another, unsure of how to respond. It was the right thing to do, Cartha then answered, bringing a smile to our faces. The scribe smiled as well, nodding his head with approval. He then selected a particular scroll case from his inventory and handed it to Redfern, an apparent gift. I've had this scroll for years, but never had a need for it, and nobody wanted it anyway. Something tells me it may come in useful, so I want you to have it. Rather surprised, Redfern took the scroll tube, the container labeled Dispel Magic. Given how much dwarves hated magic, I wasn't surprised that the scribe hadn't been able to sell it. Likely something that may be useful, however, we thanked the scribe for the gift and Redfern stowed it away. After some lunch within the local tavern, we returned to the power tower entrance and all the dwarven guards standing there. The dwarven captain approached us again, not happy at all to see us. Look, I already told you, the captain barked, his voice rude and insulting. Lord Hefrallen isn't seeing anyone. Now, return to wherever you came from before we get violent. The dwarven guards readied their weapons, their demeanor growing hostile. Perhaps just in time, I showed the captain the seal of Lord Hefrallen that Voxar had given us a few hours before, requesting entry into the castle. Let me see that. The guard captain demanded, seizing the seal from my hands and inspecting it. Where did you get this? The dwarf demanded to know, quite suspicious of us now. I haven't seen one of these in years. Who gave this to you and why? Recalling during our recent encounter with Voxar that we needed to keep her involvement a secret, I gave the guard captain a bogus story about winning the seal in a recent game of chance with several other dwarves at the city casino. The captain eyed me very suspiciously, but I was able to maintain the ruse and not give anything more away. Follow me, the captain growled, signaling to his men that they should stand down and allow my party to pass. The dwarf turned, then led us into the power tower, the guards standing by to attack if anyone in my party tried anything foolish. As we climbed several flights of stairs and passed through the lower levels of the tower, I saw all manner of dwarven portraits and artifacts, items likely owned by Lord Hefrallen's family through the centuries and all impressive. The climb up the tower took 20 minutes or so. Reviewing it all, I was left with the strong impression that Hefrallen's family was not just rich and powerful but steeped deeply in tradition, and that its kings over the centuries had ruled wisely and with confidence. From such a perspective, it was strange to think that the current lord could somehow allow the entire city to suddenly go without water. We finally arrived within the rich and splendid palace room of Lord Hefrallen, the chamber functional as well as opulent. Hefrallen himself sat within his bejeweled throne, surrounded by at least a dozen dwarven servants, consultants, and the like, the entire chamber protected by another dozen guards or so. The dwarven captain led us into the palace room and to within 20 feet of Lord Hefrallen, ordering us to bow as he himself approached the king. Engaged in conversation with several of his consultants, I got my first good look at Lord Hefrallen, the dwarf dressed in regal splendor and appearing every bit the ruler of the Cyan Desert that I expected. He did seem a little young for a dwarven king, but I paid that little heed. What is this? The lord of the dwarves here in blue demanded to know, shocked by our party's unannounced presence. I thought I made it clear, no visitors. My deepest apologies, Lord Hefrallen, the captain responded, under duress. They presented your royal seal, tradition demands that they be given audience. They claim to have won it in a game of chance. The dwarven lord took his time before turning his attention to us, our presence clearly a bother. All right, fine, Lord Hefrallen began, looking us over for only a moment as he prepared to attend to other things. I heard there were some adventurers here in blue, what do you want? Considering we had come all this way to help, I had expected a better reception. We're here to help you with the loss of all your water, Cartha returned, her voice reassuring. That's under control. Fraulein huffed. If that's why you're here, you've come a long way for nothing. Guards. Escort these heroes back out. The same dwarven captain snapped to attention and turned in our direction, calling for a dozen fellow dwarves as well. One moment, Lord Fraulein, an older woman's voice called out from the group of people surrounding the grumpy king. These heroes came a long way to help this fair city, pay them some respect. Recognizing the voice, I spotted the inner circle representative Voxar standing to the left of Lord Fraulein, the soft-spoken wizard glancing in our direction before continuing. Lord Fraulein, the wizard continued, her voice soft yet firm. You may feel that you have the situation here in blue under control, but, as a truistic of the inner circle, I say you need all the help you can get. If these heroes have come to help find the missing tears of blue, what harm can they possibly do to you? That's enough, Voxar, the Dwarven King sneered, not appreciating the unsolicited input. Yes, as always, the circle wizard thinks she knows better, another voice criticized to the right of Lord Fraulein. Standing there was Supreme Healer Priest Dilt, the most powerful cleric within the Cyan Desert. Dressed in expensive, regal clothing befit for a prince, Dilt appeared strong, proud, and intimidating, the perfect holy man capable of achieving any goal imaginable. Lord Fraulein has everything under control, Dilt continued, addressing Voxar as if she were the lowliest of acolytes. The last thing we need are outsiders poking around where they don't belong. You mean you don't want them finding out what's really happening here? The circle wizard responded, matching Dilt's determination with a grin. That sounds like an accusation. Dilt retorted, becoming angry. If there is an accusation to make, then by all means, make it. If you have the proof. The two political enemies stared coldly at one another, prompting Kartha to speak. Please, we're not here to start a fight. There are thousands of dwarves dying of thirst, we need to help them as soon as possible. The eyes of Supreme Healer Priest Dilt enlarged suddenly, the cleric insulted. Dilt then noticed Saint standing within the party and instead stepped to him. Lord Fraulein, there is a fellow Sislan here within this party, Dilt announced as he stepped to Saint My child, who are you, and where is home for you? I am Saint the cleric responded, softly patting his chest twice and then holding out his palm, the universal sign of Sisla. I was quested by Supreme Healer Priest Jepinor and Kathleen to join and assist this adventuring party. Yes, Nor. In Pirapa. I know well of him, Dilt commented, his attitude remarkably more respectful. And these heroes you're with, do you trust them? Saint turned to me as if asking for my approval. I softly nodded and smiled, my confidence and heroism prompting Saint to respond in kind. These aren't just my compatriots but my friends, and I would give my life for them. Dilt stared into the eyes of Saint for several long moments, as if he could read the young man's mind. Healer Priest Dilt then spun around and marched directly back to Lord Fraulein, whispering something into his ear. The real question is, do we trust this priest Dilt? Eswin whispered into my own ear. Like Eswin, I couldn't help but wonder whether Dilt could be trusted as well. He was the Supreme Healer Priest and a figure to be respected, but my intuition warned me that the guy was hiding something. I suppose we dwarves could use a little help, Lord Fraulein sheepishly began, the dwarf clearly embarrassed. I therefore authorize your assistance here in blue. Find the cause of our missing water and report back when you know more. Start your search within the aqueduct beneath the city, Dilt continued, addressing me directly. Take this key, it will get you into the aqueduct entrance located in the southwestern corner of the city. Dilt then handed me a large, older but unique iron key, which I stashed into my pack. Thank you, Supreme One, Saint confidently stated alongside me. Is there anything else you can tell us? You'll find the aqueduct changed when you reach it. Something's happened down there and it no longer looks normal, so be aware. Saint nodded and did the double pat on the chest thing again, Dilt returning the sign of Sisla in mutual respect. As the encounter ended, I noticed a few things that didn't seem right. First, it was strange how quickly Lord Fraulein changed his mind. Second, I noticed, just for a moment, a quick glance between Fraulein and Dilt and a wry smile, as if the two were plotting something. The whole situation felt off, so I knew we needed to be careful. Dilt nodded to Saint then joined Lord Fraulein, everyone else here within the palace room returning to their business. Voxar also nodded to us with a soft smile, as we had done exactly what she was hoping we would. The Dwarven captain and contingent of guards then stepped alongside our party, escorting us out of the tower and back outside, soon pointing the way to the aqueduct entrance beyond. The aqueduct entrance located to the southwest near the city's main gate, a lone stone building stood here, only 10 feet to a side and its eastern wall containing a single door. No other windows, decorative features or, frankly, anything else was noticeable. The door was the only object associated with the building. 2 dwarven guards stood before the door, each of them quite bored and likely wanting to be anywhere but here. As we approached, however, they snapped to attention, asking us to move along. This place seems a little odd, Redfern began, looking it over like everyone else within the party. May we ask what it's for? Who are you? One of the guards responded, neither civil nor disobedient. We've come to Blue to help restore your lost water, Cartha said, trying to reassure the pair of dwarven guards. What can you tell us about this place? It's the entrance to our aqueduct, the second guard answered, reasonably sure we were not a threat. But nobody is allowed in, the door is locked and only a special key from Lord Huelsman himself will get you in. You mean this? I displayed the key provided by Lord Huelsman, certainly surprising the 2 guards. Holding the key for the guards to see, they nodded in agreement that it was authentic, we could pass. And that's a wrap of episode number 24, Before the Dwarven King. Expect additional episodes every few weeks as the story continues.